So good evening and welcome to the live coverage of the United States Sprint Cup here at Simply Race and covered by Virtually Entertained. My name's Ben. I'll be covering this race alongside Callum Cripps, and we are looking forward to a 45-minute race around the Portland International Circuit in the USF 2000 cars. So up for a really exciting race. These cars really suit this circuit. Really suit this circuit. What have you got in
well, it's going to be very interesting. It's definitely going to be very interesting. We've got a really long run into turn one, especially, and it's a really long corner, so it's going to be well, hopefully everybody's going to be absolutely fine getting around there, but we might see a few cars spin off and potentially that might be race ruined. It's a 45-minute long race though, so there's plenty of time for them to get that time back. We've got pit phases as well, so they won't be changing any tyres. They'll have tyre degradation, but we don't think a lot of drivers will change tyres, although they do have the choice to. And we will also be having the fuel come into account as well, so drivers will have to stop for fuel, which will be very interesting to see how much they put in. Absolutely. So just to clarify, all the drivers start with 17.5 litres of fuel. That will run out between 20 and 30 minutes into the race. They can choose whenever they like to pit, as long as they make it all the way to the end. Most drivers will not change their tyres. Some might decide to. Tyre degradation is going to be extremely high on this circuit, lots of high-speed corners, and a lot of the drivers have been putting a lot of lock on the steering wheel during practice, so it'll be really interesting to see how that works for them. We have just done 15 minutes of practice, and then we've done our one lap pole shootout as well, and we have got Stuart Goff on pole position. The mini challenge driver, so he's going to be very quick indeed, so it's a good one to look out for. The one to look out for is Jack Ashton. He's raced in the last series that we did of USSC, and he's going to be very quick indeed. Scott Woodward is up there as well, the commentator. He's going to be very quick. So yeah, lots of big names to look out for during this race. It's going to be very interesting to see who can potentially move up the field. We've got Josh Banwell as well, who had a really bad qualifying, 3.4 seconds off the pace. He's going to be looking to move up the field.
Absolutely. So plenty to look out for. We will then pass you off to just a quick demo on what Simply Race actually offers, and then we'll be cutting to the start of the race. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for waiting around there. We are just about to start our 45-minute race at the Portland International Circuit. Drivers are sat down eagerly in their seats at the moment. You can see their cars currently in the pit lane. You'll see them flip very shortly to the grid, and we'll be doing a full rolling pace lap. It's really key that this pace lap, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously the drivers have got to get their tyres warm, their brakes warm. This all does actually count. It seems silly that we're talking about it in sim racing, but it really does matter to get your brakes warm. You know, everything warmed up, ready for the start of this race. So it's going to be very quick to see who progresses in turn one. So the drivers will shortly be switching to the tracks. You'll see them now. You can actually see. I think is that on the camera?
Yeah, so
you can see us. Hello,
hello,
everybody.
Yeah, you can see Darren, who's operating
on the cameras, so he's going to be giving you all the stream from tonight. We're quickly going to switch now to the cars onto the track, and they'll begin their parade lap before the start of this race.
Absolutely. So, following behind the Corvette pace car, we've got Stuart Goff, then our pole sitter, with Chris Hardwick alongside him. Can't quite see Chris's car.
It's just behind Seth's car. There we go. So we're all pulling away now.
130
We've got four 130 racing cars. probably starting in second, I think. Yeah, so we got 4 130 racing cars here, so a strong turnout from them teams. Obviously, we do have lots of different teams entering this event this time, so there's independent trophies as well going up for team trophies as well, so it's going to be very interesting to see. We've got Goff on pole from Hardwick, Woodwiss, Ashton and Winwood in the top 5. Dave Hedges rounds up top 6 along with Dave Robson in the 130 racing car. Matt Goodger-Scott, he's going to be one to watch, I think, in that
top Cam
Sport car.
Yeah.
Yep. Teammates, that's Colin Talbot down in 11th place, but between them we've got Clumpus in 9th, Michael Balding in 10th, Colin Talbot, who we just mentioned a minute ago, in 11th. Sean King, a poor shown from him in qualifying, starts 12th. We've got Jax, Banwell and Eccles to round out the top 15, and the 16th car that we've never actually had 16 cars running in live before, but we've got Harold running out the top 16, so it's going to be interesting to see how everybody negotiates his first few corners. It was in fact very, very close in qualifying, wasn't it, between the top from 2nd to 4th. It was covered by 200ths of a second, so it's very, very interesting qualifying session there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and Stuart Goff just getting ahead of everybody by around about a 10th of a second, so still very, very close.
Yeah, Stuart's been. I think you mentioned Stuart. He races in mini challenge in real life.
He does, yeah.
He did do some single seater racing, I think, in his past as well.
Yeah.
Quite an impressive transition to sim racing from Stuart. Actually, I remember watching him a few months ago, and without being a little bit harsh, not massively impressed, but he was quick. He was very quick, but he wasn't sim racer level quite yet. And we are just about to start the race then, as the safety car pulls in, and the cars are waiting for the green flag.
Yep, they should be going green anytime soon now. I think they're round about, as soon as they hit the line, off they go. So we are racing for the first round.
So very good start then up the inside. Was that Scott Woodwiss, who's got a really good start in that yellow USF 2000 car?
They're all towing towards each other going up to turn 1. It's going to be very interesting.
Accident in the back.
That's a green and black car just going wide there. We'll try and find out who that was. That's Sean King going wide. So not a great start from Sean King. We still got the leaders. Stuart Goff still leading from Woodwiss and Hardwick, and then it's Mark Winwood actually in 4th place in that 130 racing car, but Goff seems to have got a great start at the moment. He's got about 2 car lengths on everybody as they come through the first couple of corners. We've got a car spun in the background as well. I think that's Humpers in the 6th pod. Unfortunately, we've got some shouting as well. I think that was Colin Talbot. I think he's dropped back to 15th place, unfortunately for Colin. So 16th place in fact. So he's dropped back down to last, unfortunately, after he's had a problem there. So coming around to complete the first lap, just coming out the back corner now. Though this is a very interesting point of the race because everybody's still very close together. But you can see everybody's going to the inside of the racetrack, and they're weaving to try and get out of the tow.
Yeah, so one really key thing about these cars that we didn't mention, particularly in the introduction, is they are
hugely downforce deceptive.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you can get in the tow of another car, makes a big, big difference. And we can see, Mark Winwood going up the inside of Chris Hardwick, up beside the inside of his teammate. So
Chris Hardwick was, of course, the championship from the last round that we did of USSC. So he's got a championship to maintain. And unfortunately,
reigning champion.
Unfortunately for him, he's just been overtaken by his teammate Mark Winwood, who is a real dark horse in this race. I think he's definitely put his mind towards the racing car a bit more and done a lot of testing. But you can see Chris Hardwick's actually coming back at him again. So they're swapping positions all the time. Winwood's still ahead, but into the braking zone. I think Chris Hardwick's just going to take that place. I think it's a left-hand corner coming up. Yes, it is. So and Hardwick goes through again to take that 3rd position. These two don't want to battle too hard because they'll lose in touch with the leaders at the moment. Scott Woodwiss, though, keeping Jack Goff, that's a touring car, Stuart Goff very, very honest. Coming up to turn 1 now, you can see they're weaving to try and get out the tow again, but Woodwiss is definitely following him as now Hardwick's under attack from Jack Ashton.
Whoa, and that's
very close indeed.
Big oversteer moment as he tries to break out the tow and make him move around the outside. So Scott Woodwiss looking to make a move around the outside of Stuart Goff for the lead, and he's maybe going to dive at the inside of turn 2. No,
thinks better of it.
There is a big overtaking opportunity just after this left-hander here. A very, very wide entry to turn number 4, and you could throw it up the inside, but
this
really
early on in the race,
absolutely.
It is 4 or 5 minute race. We see Stuart Goff going slightly wide coming into turn 3 there, so still probably not got them tyres fully up to temperature just yet. You see them two DJM racing cars, they're very close on the back in Michael Balding and Dave Hedges in 6th and 7th, sorry. Them two starting to cruise up to the back of the 130 racing cars a tiny bit, so that might be a battle to watch later on. We see Scott Woodward getting a bit on the curb there and upsetting the car slightly, and Stuart Goff gapped him a tiny bit there. So now we're watching the cars come onto the main straight once again. It's very, very interesting to see how everybody... Look at that, Stuart Goff is weaving left to right to try and break that toe from Scott Woodward, but at the moment Mark Winwood seems to be starting to get on the back of them as well. We can see Jack Ashton going for a move on Chris Hardwick down into turn 1. I don't think Scott Woodward is going to mount a charge this time with Stuart Goff. He thinks better of it. But in the background we can see Jack Ashton just side by side with his teammate Chris Hardwick. But at the moment you can see Mark Winwood taking a wider line now in 3rd place into turn 2 and thinking about making a move on Scott, but thinks better of it this time around. So Scott Woodward still in 2nd place for the moment in that very bright fluorescent yellow machine. This car's come through now, still very close for the top 3 within 0.8 of a second. And Chris Hardwick starting to drop back a tiny bit, so we're not seeing the pace from Chris Hardwick that we've seen last season. But I'm sure he'll come into play later in the race. Maybe he's got a trick up his sleeve at the moment. They're looking after their tyres as they come round to complete lap 4 and onto lap 5. And you can see again on board with Mark Winwood this time around, a very wide start-finish line, but you can see he's weaving left to right, and you don't want to do that too much because could pick up a penalty. Minnie isn't really defending a position at the moment, he's just trying to break the toe. But still it doesn't seem to be working as the gap comes down and down as Woodward tries to close onto the back of him. He actually goes very, very wide into turn 1, and Woodward almost takes advantage of that as we see Jack Ashton go around the outside of Chris Hardwick there, I think, into turn 1. So that was a cracking move by Jack in that car. And very, very good as he moved up into 4th place. So we got a move from Scott Wood. I think that was just a defensive move, that was. Winwood's actually got past Woodward, so they're side by side coming out of turn 3, and that was a very, very strong move there. It looked by Woodward. So I think he sent it down the inside, and then Winwood came back on the attack from him. But now Woodward is trying to make the move into turn 1. This very, very difficult part of the circuit, very fast, very flowing. You don't want to go side by side through here. And you can see the pit entry was just on the right hand side there as we come in, so that's where the cars will be going once they come to pit. But for the moment I think Mark Winwood's got a very good run, and Stuart Goff has definitely broken the toe as those two have been fighting. And now we've got Jack Ashton, who in 5th place 1 minute ago, and now he's battling for 2nd position. As he joins this battle, he's going to go to the outside while Woodward fends off Winwood on the inside. Let's see if Jack Ashton can hang this around the outside. There's contact between the two, and Mark Winwood, I think, has gone round there. Yeah, unfortunately they just got squeezed. That's the unfortunate way that these open wheel cars sometimes tangle, and this means that the gap's wide open for 2nd place now as Jack Ashton looks to be making a move on Woodward, but Woodward holds his line to the inside. He's going to brake nice and early to try and get that tighter line, but Jack Ashton, wise to it, goes right round the outside. A very, very strong move then from Jack Ashton, moves up into 2nd place. A very impressive showing from him. And now we've got Chris Hardwick on the back of these guys, and Dave Hedges has joined the fight as well. It's a good showing from Dave Hedges so far. He's doing very well and catching these guys up. We've now got a fantastic battle for 2nd place. Look at this. It's fantastic. Oh, there's a load of contact there, and there was a bump from Woodward onto the back of Jack Ashton, who then in turn hit Chris Hardwick out wide.
Really an overtaking place there, is it?
No, I think Scott just missed his braking ever so slightly there, and just it was nice and straight, but still unfortunately punted Jack, and Jack managed to save it. We'll try and get a replay of that for you. Yeah. But Jack Ashton seems to got away scot-free there, and unfortunately for Chris Hardwick, my apologies, has gone all the way down to 9th place. Very unfortunate for him. So the champion from last season, we've got a replay now of it. We'll bring you that very shortly. And you can see Jack Ashton still going round turn 3. And now we will have a replay of that. So here we go. We've got Jack Ashton leading this train of cars. We see Mark Winwood close behind in that virtually entertained 130 racing car. You can see Scott Woodward just giving a punt to Jack Ashton. That was really uncalled for, and unfortunately Chris just got tangled in the wheels of Scott Woodward there.
I'm not sure that Scott really hit him too hard. It was on the inside, but
no, very unfortunate indeed. So Chris Hardwick back up to 8th place already, but Josh Banwell in 9th. I don't think Banwell's doing well, enjoying this circuit too much, unfortunately, but he's still soldiering on very well in that yellow car just behind Chris Hardwick now. As we go on to, well, if Stuart Goff's gone through, he's now got almost a 3-second gap between Jack Ashton, so he's definitely broke that toe and is running away with the lead at the moment. We've still got 36 minutes to go in this race, so anything can still happen. Obviously, we've got the pit stops still to come. As they see, going through a very, very long double apex turn 1 right now and going into turn 2. Very tight second gear corner. Potentially, we were talking to some of the drivers earlier, and obviously they want to save as much fuel as possible so they can prolong the pit stop till pretty much the end of the race. And they were saying in the first sector, you can pretty much almost leave, you can use all the gears if you want to, first, second, third, but a lot of drivers were just keeping it in third, keeping the revs down low, using the momentum and using the car's torque and being able to save quite a lot of fuel doing that. So we might see, there was a car in the middle of the track there that was just sitting there, I think, on the back straight, so we'll have to have a look at that, but that was very, very close to the other cars. And I'm not sure if it's Eccles who's gone now a lap down, but we'll have to have a look. It was a white car, I know that for sure. But we'll try and get a replay of that for you in a second as we see a race still as Dave Hedges obviously is now in 3rd place. You can see his name actually in the cockpit view as we've got Scott Woodward. You can see it in the right mirror. And let's see if they leave each other room going through this first corner. Yes, they do, so they get around absolutely fine. Oh no, actually, Hedges goes wide and Woodward takes that place. So unfortunately for him, Dave Hedges moves down to 4th place. Still a very good showing from him. He's now got Mark Winwood, who had a bit of calamity earlier with all them cars bunching together. He's now making the place. Wow, very strong move there, just bumping tyres ever so slightly, but Mark Winwood gets past Dave Hedges for that 4th position. So a good move there from Mark Winwood, who's looking still to progress in this race after having a bit of a melee earlier on. So Scott Woodward's now in the fluorescent yellow car, now in 3rd place. You see Stuart Goff still gapping that. He's taken another half second out Jack Ashton on that last lap alone, in fact. So very, very quick indeed from Stuart Goff. He's really showing his real-life racing skills here at the Simply Race facility tonight. We're watching one of the Cam Sport cars now. I believe this is Colin Talbot with Sean King just behind him. In fact, there's a green car slowing down there, unfortunately. I think that was Sean King. So Sean King dropped back down to 12th place, unfortunately. I don't know what happened there, but I'm really not sure at all, because he was still on the racing line, in fact, just very, very slow. So not sure what happened there. So we're just watching, I believe this is Mark Winwood circulating in 4th place. Yes, it is. In that lovely blue, yellow and white car of the 130 racing machine. 4 130 racing machines obviously out in force today, and those guys putting on a great show for us at the moment. Further back down the field, we've still got battles all the way down. I think this is this Matt Goodger-Scott, Jack tussling with Clumpers as he looks to make a move, I believe. Very, very close, in fact. nearly had a chopper front wing come off there. That's
actually put him under a bit of pressure then from Jax, who is probably looking to line up a move on the inside of the chicane, which is a pretty dangerous place to have a look. Is he going to do it?
I don't think so.
Sensibly ducking back into the slipstream and probably looking at a move down. Goodger-Scott's made a lot of time up under braking there on Clumpers. And how's this going to work out with the slipstreaming down the straight? Now, no slipstream for Goodger-Scott, but he manages to get past. But Clumpers now gets back in his slipstream. Is he now going to be able to make a move down the inside, move back on Goodger-Scott? And yes, he is. Who's going to brake latest?
There's a bit of contact there.
Contact in the open wheel nature means they both go wide, and they're both going to lose some time and positions. They both lose 2 positions. And, I think that was a bit of unfortunate. I'm not sure who that was. I think that's Jason Eccles going off again, unfortunately. And good for Goodger-Scott, but until the very last moment, I think he probably squeezed Clumpers a little bit too much.
Yeah, absolutely. And Banwell and King were able to capitalise on that, in effect. They just went straight through the middle of those 2 cars, both on the grass. So, yeah, very unfortunate. I mean, Matt Goodger-Scott was so close on that on the outside there. He could have potentially saved it, but it was very, very difficult indeed. So he did well to actually keep his nerve there. But he's now coming back at Sean King, who goes through that bus stop S chicane, coming through into the last corner now. It's a very wide entry, and wow, that was very, very late on the brakes. He actually hit the back of Josh Banwell, I think. And Banwell's heading for... this is Good Scott heading for the pits. So he's obviously had enough of that battle, thought he's losing too much time, and comes in for a pit stop. So this is the first pit stop, I believe, of the race. I don't think we've seen any else so far.
Yeah, and this is now pretty much now when the pit stop window opens. So yes, he's going to have to carry a little bit of weight towards the end. It also means he's going to lose out on a bit of maybe slipstreaming from the other guys. But he, like I said, if he thinks he's being slowed down by slower drivers, then it might be his best option.
Yeah, absolutely. So Stuart Goff, that gap's starting to come down a bit. It wasn't as it was about 3.3 seconds to Ashton before, so Ashton's taking a tiny bit of time out of him. We just see him going through our shot now. Scott Woodwis in third place, quite far back, as you can see. He's on our screen now, followed by Dave Hedges, who's putting on a good show in that camo green and black car. Very bright indeed, that car there. Followed closely by Mark Winwood, who in the 130 racing car, as they come through into turn 1 now. So we may be able to go on board for a lap of this Portland circuit in a second. But very, very close indeed. And we actually got a bit of a tank slapper coming out of turn 1, and he's actually going to potentially go on the grass, and that leaves the door wide open for Mark Winwood, who is looking to then throw it up the inside. There we go, a very close move there, but he actually sweeps back and get that place back. So Dave Hedges very wise to Mark Winwood's move there, and covered him off quite nicely. As we go around the back section of the circuit now, another very, very long straight we're able to tow. We are now on board with that driver. And
this is on board with Mark Winwood then. So
yeah, as you can see, small driver inputs as well, being very smooth on the wheel, trying to preserve them tyres. Up on the curve nicely. It doesn't seem to unsettle the car too much. Now we've got Dave Hedges running for the pit lane, so that's going to be very interesting to see how he gets on. And Mark Winwood moves up into 4th place, having Dave Hedges making that stop. So we'll keep a close eye on where he comes out and how long he spends in that pit lane.
Absolutely. I think this race is really going to come down to how well the drivers look after their tyres. Some of these drivers have been quite aggressive in the opening few laps. I think they're really going to have bigger problems towards the end of the race.
Yeah, some drivers putting on an awful lot coming through the corners, not really using the rear of the car to get them through the corner nice and yeah, basically. So it's going to be very interesting to see, as we normally see the most amount of degradation on the tyres coming from the left front, and the rears don't seem to actually be that bad. So you can use the rear of the car to pivot, through the corners.
So just as a quick bit of analysis, so Hedges is now out of the pit lane, 50 seconds behind the race leader,
ahead of Michael Boulding as well.
45 seconds to get through the pit lane procedure and get the fuel done. Yeah. So that's what we have to kind of bear in mind when we look at the gaps and who's pitted and who hasn't as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be very interesting to see where Dave Hedges comes out as soon as everybody makes their stops, really, because he wasn't really batting anybody too hard. He could actually come out in a very strong position, potential top 3, as long as everybody's, some people start fighting, if not. But we're still watching. I think this is Josh Banwell in that yellow car now, just coming around the final corner, going a tiny bit wide. We've got our that's a car running wide as well, coming out of turn 1 there. There's a Cam Sport car. And,
so Stuart Goff is being sensible and smart. He's probably going to be very careful with his tyres at this point of the race. So now leading by 4.1 seconds. So that gap has slightly increased by a second. And that, if he's being careful, it'll make a big difference to the end of the race.
Absolutely. Some drivers have just got. This is the kind of time, middle of the race, where they kind of start to chill out a tiny bit, get into a nice groove, and then as soon as pit stop phase come, they can assess their tyre wear and get back to full racing speed and potential battle with people coming out of the pit lane. So we'll keep a close gap on how Dave Hedges is doing in relation to Stuart Goff. That time is actually static at the moment at 51.8, 51.6 seconds. So as we see a move here from, who was that? I think that was from Clumpers on Josh Banwell. So that was a very strong move there, going into the second to last corner. Very strong indeed as Banwell now dives for the pit lane. Got to make sure he keeps it under 50 miles an hour going through here. There's no pit speed limiter, so the driver's really on their own to determine how fast they go through the pits, and if they pick up a penalty for speeding, that's a drive through they have to take as well. So a very strong penalty there for people that even go 1 mile an hour over the speed limit through the pit lane. So everybody being very cautious there, I'm sure, as we're watching Jack Ashton now in that lovely 130 racing machine. You see Jack Goff, keep on saying Jack. Stuart Goff, my apologies, Stuart. Just going through now, followed by Jack Ashton very shortly after about 4 seconds or so. The gap's static at about 4 seconds at the moment. Scott Woodwis is another 1.2 back from Jack, but still hot on his heels. And Mark Winwood, in fact, dropped back slightly, actually. I'm surprised Mark has dropped back as far as that, to be honest, on Scott Woodwis, but we're looking to, I'm sure, make another move. We see two cars together. I believe this is this Eccles and oh no, it might be I'm not sure. Yes, it's Goff. It's Goff lapping. There we go. That's why I thought there's no two silver cars together. There was Goff lapping Eccles. My apologies for that. So it was Eccles involved. Ashton, we can see just going around the back of the circuit now. And Harold's made in fact Harold, who hasn't pitted yet, is in 5th place, so that's a good showing from him so far. And we've got Colin Talbot in 7th place. Colin, obviously a Simply Race veteran really here. You see him in the SRES, the Simply Race Endurance Championship, as well as the touring cars that we ran last season, and the USSC we ran last season as well. So good to see Colin back for another year. And he's still looking to develop his skills in sim racing and make it up to towards the top end of the grid, into the top 5. I'm sure he'll be very happy with that today, but we may still see him there further on in this race. 30 seconds back from the leaders at the moment, but still a very good showing from him, along with Sean King. And those two parted by around 8 seconds at the moment, so quite out now as the whole grid. In fact, we've got it's quite a close battle for 5th and 6th between Harold and Hardwick. And also Dave Robertson in the position in the 130 race. I'm surprised that he's so far down, but I'm sure he'll try and pull his way back into that strong top 10 position, as we're now on lap 18 and pretty much halfway through this race. And this is where we'll see the pit stops coming in. Drivers will be dropping down the order, then building their ways back up. We always see David Hedges into 11th place now after pitting earlier on. So as we go on to lap number 19 now, Stuart Goff is losing Jack Ash now. Jack's taken about a second out of him in the last few moments since we've been talking about. And Good Scott now 1 lap behind. He might have had a small problem earlier on, maybe a spin that set him back a tiny bit. We did see the contact earlier on with him, and that may have set him back a little. Just 1 lap. He has pitted, so it will. It's quite a short lap around here. Actually, we're looking at lap times around the 1:09, 1:10 mark. So when they see it's 1 lap behind, it's not a huge difference. They will gain that lap back once the leaders have pitted. So as we move on to, we see any cars coming into the pit lane? No, there's quite a few cars staying out and letting their fuel run drives. The fuel runs out and the cars will be a lot lighter, so they will be a tiny bit quicker through the tight complex of corners between Sector 2 and Sector 3. As we see, I believe this is Sean King just coming around turn 1 now. Ahead of him, Dave Hedges in the 9th place DM racing car. And very nice camo livery on those cars, all very bright green and black, but you're able to tell them different. So we've got 4 green cars all in the same shot. How exciting is that? As they come through the back section of the track now, we've got Dave Hedges, and we've got word that the race leader is soon to come in. In fact, as we see Jack Ashton making a move on, I believe that is back marker Eccles, yeah. So Jack Ashton just making his way past him, and I think that's actually cost him some time there, as he was within 3 seconds of Stuart Goff. He's now lost about, so Woodward is closed quite far onto the back of Jack Ashton. I think he was showing his frustration there a moment ago. And section of track now, we've got 2 cars. This is Dave Hedges and Sean King going for 9th position. So Dave Hedges makes the move into turn 1, but Sean King looks to make his cutback. Unfortunately, just doesn't make it, and has to concede that place to Dave Hedges, who's still making his way up the field. I'm pretty sure both them DM racing cars have stopped now, so we'll see them starting to move up the field. Their next target is Dave Robertson in that 130 racing car, and then we've got Clumpers in 8th position. In fact, I think he's just pitted, as Stuart Goff is now in the pits, as we can see him down in 6th position. So it's going to be very interesting to see who stops this time around and who keeps going. I think Jack Ashton will be expecting pretty much everybody in within the next 2 to 3 laps. We've actually got Josh Banwell out of the car, unfortunately. He's going to the toilet. Oh, okay. So, unfortunately... You are? What's wrong? Oh, right. So, unfortunately, he took tyres on that last stop because he forgot to turn it off. So that is the unfortunate way in which Josh Banwell... unfortunately, because he's a very strong contender as Josh Banwell, so it's see him drop out of this race. But we still got 15 cars in strong running. As you see, that car just leaving the pit now. So Stuart Goff come out of his pit box and is 11th place. So this is very, very interesting as he comes out of the pit lane. He's in 11th place now. He's 60 seconds behind, in fact. So he's putting way too much fuel, and it turns out that Dave Hedges has actually overtook him by a good 15 seconds or so. So Stuart Goff has absolutely thrown this race away completely. It's really unfortunate for him, but unfortunately it seems he just put way too much fuel in. So unless everybody else has fueled very light, I suspect that Stuart Goff has just thrown this lead absolutely away, and unbeknown is that to Jack Ashton, who will be now technically in the lead of this race after the pit stop phase, as long as he doesn't mess up his pit stop. With Scott Woodward, still very, very strong showing from Scott in 2nd place, only 7 tenths behind the leader now, with Mark Winwood about 2.5 seconds back or so from these two as they come through the back section of the track now. Now, is anybody going to pit this time around? We'll have to have a look and see if Scott Woodward or Jack Ashton dive for the pit lane. No, both of them stay out. So it's in fact Jack Ashton trying to break that toe off Scott Woodward. So you can see he's getting a bit too close for his liking, and is weaving down towards turn 1 just to make sure that he doesn't get too much of a good toe and cruise up to the back of him. These cars will be doing around 146 miles an hour at the end of the straight, I imagine, with a good toe. Without that, you'd be at least 5 mile an hour down. So we're looking at around 140 mile an hour top end around this circuit, and then we get into this very, very tight and twisty 2nd and 1st gear 2nd sector of the circuit. A very wide entrance into turn 3. We've seen Mark Winwood especially making lovely moves up the inside there earlier on in the race, and now they get onto the back stretch. The cars will get up to about 130 miles an hour here, up to about 4th or 5th gear, before they downshift 1 gear on the paddle operated wheel and put it into turns 5, 6 and 7, which come round to complete the lap. You see Scott Wood was just missing that apex there ever so slightly, but it's still closing up to the back of Jack Ashton. I think he's I think Jack Ashton's going to go for the pit lane now. They both do, in fact, so they're both leaders into the pit lane. Let's make sure that they don't speed, boys, because you don't want a penalty now. And they'll be stopping at different points in the pit lane, so it's going to be very interesting to see who gets out first. We've got another car coming round to that'll be Good Scott to unlap himself from the leaders, so he'll go on to the lead lap once again. Oh no, apologies, that's Colin Talbot actually in 9th place. So Scott Wood was right at the end of the pit lane, and we've got another 130 racing car coming in. I believe that's just leaving the pit lane now actually. So that's Mark Winwood, I believe, just heading out once again. So Scott Wood is taking tyres as well, so that's very interesting to see how he. That's very interesting. It's going to take a lot longer to take tyres than it is to take fuel, so we might end up seeing Scott Woodward actually fall down the order here somewhat if he doesn't get out in time compared to Jack Ashton. We've got another car in, that's Sean King coming into the pit lane in 6th place. We've got loads of cars coming in now. We've got at least 4 cars into the pit lane, and Dave Hedges now leads on lap 24 with Michael Balding in 2.1 seconds behind him in 2nd place. We've got that was a very close there for Sean King. Actually, very, very good situational awareness there. Jack Ashton was just going to pull out the pit and didn't see Sean King coming, so he actually slowed down, let Jack Ashton go. But Jack Ashton, 22 seconds behind the leaders, and it's going to be very interesting to see. Now, obviously, Scott Woodwis took tyres there, and as it shows, he's just leaving the pit lane now. He's got a huge gap. So Jack Ashton there getting out a lot quicker than Scott Woodwis, and unfortunately, Scott Woodwis now in 7th place, and a good 5 seconds back from Jack Ashton. Even more than that, sorry, my apologies. Looking at Colin Talbot, who's now in the middle of these two. But yeah, a huge gap, 12 seconds almost back. So from Jack Ashton. So Scott Wood taking tyres, really didn't need to do that. Obviously, he was burning his tyres a bit too much for his liking. Colin Talbot just coming round turn 3 now. So it's going to be very interesting. Could we see a potential DM Racing 1-2 here? But let's see if the 130 Racing boys can do anything about it. But Mark Winwood still 10 seconds back on these guys. I'm pretty sure that Dave Hedges and Mark Balding have definitely pitted, so it's going to be very interesting to see if they've fueled to the end of the race, and if so, if they've fueled enough, you know, to get them to the end of the race. They might have to stop again. So it's very interesting to see. It is a very long race. It's 45 minutes. It's neither a sprint nor really an endurance. It's a bit of both. So as we see, the cars still circulating around. We've got Stuart Goff is in 4th place now, just behind I believe that's a back marker of Jack's, I believe, as they come through the back end of the circuit now. I'm just taking a peer over my left shoulder to see everybody in the pods, and everybody seems to be very, very calm indeed. All just settling into a groove here, and keeping their just trying to keep their tyres, apart from obviously Scott Woodwis, who's changing, so he'll have a nice, so he'll be very, very fast indeed. But all that time in the pits, and there was a car going slightly wide coming out of turn, the last corner there, so we'll try and pick that up. But we've got, so Stuart Goff still chasing that back marker down, unfortunately all the way down in 4th place after leading for pretty much the whole race up until this point, up to lap 26 now. We've got 14 minutes left on the clock. It's going to be very interesting to see how everybody negotiates the rest of this race. We've got a car going off, and Stuart Goff almost followed him then, so for Jax, I believe, who just went off there. But Stuart Goff almost followed the car in front of him, and he's still pootling around at turn 1 trying to find a car that's gone off wide there. I believe that is that Eccles? I believe that's Eccles, yeah. So unfortunately for Eccles, he's had a bit of a trip through the grass, doing a bit of lawn mowing for us here at Simply Race. But now back onto the circuit. He's got a lot of work to do. He's 13.5 seconds back from the race leader Dave Hedges, who's keeping a nice steady gap from Michael Balding, 2 seconds behind him. Mark Winwood a steady 11 seconds, so everybody pretty spaced out again at this phase of the race, but still I think almost everybody's made their pit stops now, so we'll be keeping an eye on the pit lane to see who comes in and makes another stop. We can actually see a tram just go on the back shot there, just going over I didn't know they had live rolling graphics in the back of this, but yeah, a nice tram going on a sort of a bridge on the back of the circuit here. As we get a static shot of turn 3 as they come around the back section of the circuit now. We've got Sean King and David Robson in 11th and 12th place. We're actually watching Sean King right now in that black and green machine going through the back section of the circuit now, and ahead of him is in fact David Robson. Is going very, very wide indeed. He's got a massive tank slapper, and that was very close to save that, but now Sean King's going to just aim and fire onto the back of him, and he's going to close all the way up thanks to that slipstream these guys will have. They have a draftometer in their pod to tell them how much draft they're getting, and they'll be closing very, very quickly up to the back. He's going to try and make a move down to the inside of turn 1. David Robertson has to concede the place for now, I think, unless he tries to go around the outside. He's trying it, but I don't think it's going to work. Sean King moving up into 11th place there, so a very good move from him, and keeps that position, so well done to Sean for that move. That was great. As they come into turn 2 now, just making sure he covers that inside line, make sure there's no send it moves from David Robertson, as actually he's going to send it right now up the inside of Sean King once again. He actually takes that place back, but Sean King's going to be wise to it, gets back to the inside, and now they're going to have a drag race down into turn 5, and very, very close indeed. We'll try and pick up with these two. They actually bang wheels coming through here, so it's very, very close indeed. Sean King has just got a nose ahead of David Robson, but David Robson's got the line for turn number 6 as they come through here. He's going to brake a bit later. He actually takes the lead, and very, very, very close. But there was no real need for Sean King to back off that much going into that corner, but obviously he doesn't want to make contact and lose too much time, so a smart head from Sean King there, backing out that move, but he'll have to try it all over again. But that was all led by David Robson making having a huge moment coming out of the last corner, and unfortunately for him losing a lot of time there but gaining it back thanks to Sean King's very safe driving coming through the last part of the circuit. So Dave Hedges leads by 2.5 seconds over his teammate Michael Balding and Mark Winwood in 3rd place, so it's very interesting to see who's got enough fuel to get to the end of the race. I'm pretty sure the majority have. We might see 1 or 2 coming in for a last minute pit stop because they can't get to the end of the race, so we'll keep an eye out for that as we see this car going very, very wide indeed. And Stuart Goff actually takes that place, so that was Mark Winwood going very, very wide in 3rd place and conceding the place to Stuart Goff, who he's made up quite a ton of time actually on he made up a humongous amount of time. So Stuart Goff, unless he's absolutely flying, unless Stuart Goff took tyres and now he's very, very fast on that new set of tyres, we just presume that he put in too much fuel. But either way, I think it's still very, very close between these guys. Jack Ashton, I'm surprised that he's so far down after taking his pit stop earlier on. We've got 2 cars very close together. In fact, there was a DM Racing car in there somewhere, but I think that was Dave Hedges just lapping another car as they come round in the complete lap 30 now. So we're on lap 30, and very, very close indeed for these guys now as Stuart Goff overtaking Mark Winwood on that last lap. And there's, I think there's going to be a bit of contact somewhere as Colin Talbot will try and pick that one up, in fact. But actually Colin's tumbling down the order. He was 7th a minute ago, he's now 9th. So Chris Hardwick and Harold have both gone past him. I think he had a bit of contact with Scott Woodwist by the sounds of it. We'll try and pick that up. Unfortunately for Colin, he was doing quite well in 6th and 7th place, so unfortunately he's dropped back down to 9th, not really where he wants to be. He wants to try and aim for those top 5 finishes and to help his team in the championship. Obviously now that both Cam Sport cars 9th and 10th, and Colin Talbot asking the race director to have a look at that collision there to see if anything can be done. So now Colin Talbot and Matt Goodge-Scott, both Cam Sport cars running together 9th and 10th, only about a second away from each other, 47 seconds down on the leaders at the moment, both having made their pit stops. So it's going to be very interesting to see if these guys can try and claw their way back, but unfortunately for Colin it's cost him a heap of time. So it's going to be very interesting to see how these guys get on. Dave Hedges in the meantime, the leader of this race so far, is gapped to Michael Balding somewhat. Another second taken out of Michael Balding in that last few laps. And Stuart Goff still bringing that gap down to the leader. So let's see if Stuart Goff in the last 8 minutes can claw back a 9-second deficit. Well, a 9 to 10 second deficit on Michael Balding as Stuart Goff tries to make a move on a back marker, I believe that was. So that was very, very close indeed. And we've still got debates going on. I think Colin Talbot's really not happy with that contact that was made by, well, the contact between him and Scott Woodwist. We still yet to see what actually happened there. We'll try and get a replay up for you later on of that. But Colin Talbot's still very vocal, driving quite angry now as he makes his way round turn 3 onto the back section of circuit. So these guys are pretty much closest cars on circuit right now to Colin Talbot and Matt Goodge-Scott in 9th and 10th place. Behind them we've got the 130 race car David Robson about a minute back from the leaders, so I'm sure David doesn't want to be that far back, to be honest. He's normally a front running driver, so it's unfortunate for him to see him, well, unfortunate to see him so far down. Sean King in 12th place, another won't be very happy with his performance tonight. And also we've got Josh Bramwell. Josh, come in and have a quick word with me while this race is slightly mellowed a bit. What happened?
Pit stop. Well, sorry. I messed up.
Apologies for that. Apologies, everybody. Obviously.
Yeah, I put tyres on, didn't I? Right. And I was slow as it was, and I didn't want to get in anyone's way because I was leery as anything out there. So
you thought you'd just be safe and
I didn't want to ruin anyone's race.
That's all right. That's smart thinking there from Josh Bamwell. Obviously, apologies still for the language used a minute ago, but we'll still keep this race going. But yeah, unfortunate for Josh Bamwell, now 14 laps behind. Sorry, Josh. But we've got a replay now, so we'll have a watch. This is the replay that we were asking for a minute ago between Colin Talbot and Scott Woodwiss. So let's see if Colin goes up the inside here. So he does make the move. He's not fully alongside him. It wasn't. Yeah, I wouldn't say the move was fully on there. Unfortunately, Scott did. He could have given more room. Unfortunately, but I'd class that as a racing incident. Unfortunately for Colin, it's just very unfortunate for him. He just seemed to. He could have potentially waited until the last corner, kept on his tail, and then looked to make an overtake coming into turn 1. But unfortunately now Colin suffered because of that. He's now back to 10th place, and Goodger Scott has now taken the 9th place away from Colin Talbot. So those two swapping positions there in the Cam Sport cars. In the meanwhile, with 5 minutes 30 still on the clock, Dave Hedges leads from Michael Balding 3.2 seconds ahead of Stuart Goff, who's in 3rd, Mark Winwood in 4th, Jack Ashton in 5th, Scott Woodwiss, who we just saw a moment ago tangling with Colin Talbot, in 6th place, with Chris Hardwick, my apologies, our champion from last season, in 7th. Not a great showing from Chris Hardwick. Obviously he did have a spin earlier on with a bit of contact with I believe it was Scott Woodwiss. So Harold showing a great showing a great turn of pace in 8th. It's good to see him invited along to the championship and having a great time. We see these two Cam Sport cars still circulating at the moment. This is the closest battle we've got on track, and I'm sure there'll be a bit of teammate rivalry going on here. Colin wants to prove a point to Matt Goodger Scott. These guys will also be racing in this Simply Race Endurance Championship that we'll have running in about 3 weekends' time here, and that will be running 15 cars, GT3 cars in fact. So we've got the Bentley GT3, the Radical RXC, I believe, GT3 car. Also have the Mercedes AMG GTS AMG GT3, and the final one is of course the Corvette. So that's going to be very interesting indeed to see. Oh no, we've got a 5th car as well. What's that 5th car? Bentley, Radical, Mercedes, McLaren. Yes, we'll also see the McLaren. So yeah, the McLaren 650S is going to be a very interesting car to have as we see these two Cam Sport cars getting very, very close there, in fact. So see those guys very close indeed. So we're going to see if Matt Goodger Scott can make a move back on Colin Talbot, and Colin's still very angry about that decision made by the race director, saying it was a racing incident. I still think I agree with the race director, in fact, on that one. But as he makes the move, so Matt Goodger Scott makes his way back into the 9th place. So these guys will be basically chasing the points now. They don't really want to hit each other off. You see a car going very wide. Let's hope they don't make contact. I believe that's Eccles, who's being lapped once again by these guys. So as he goes very wide, goes a bit of drifto and back onto the circuit. So a bit unsteady there, but still enjoying his time here at Simply Race as we get into the final 3 minutes. And it looks like DM Racing guys have absolutely run away with it, in case unless they run out of fuel. But we'll be very close to see if those guys can get to the end of their race on the fuel they have supplied left. So, and then we've got another battle here, in fact. One car, it's a 130 race car swerving across the track. Is that Hardwick? In fact, so Hardwick trying to keep Harold at bay. So we've got the Hardwick-Harold battle. It's going to be very hard to do commentate on as Harold looks towards the inside of Hardwick and doesn't seem to make any place there. But yeah, definitely Hardwick is wobbling very vigorously down the main straight. So you don't want to be doing that too much. You don't want to pick up any penalties for blocking. But at the moment, he was just too far back. He was just trying to break the toe. There's a lot of luck applied from Chris Hardwick trying to get around that turn 3. without going onto the grass. Now Harold's going to be right onto the back of him. This battle for 7th place has come right around the back of the circuit. Now Harold's going to be right on the back. He's actually just nudging him down the back straight as they come into the very fast section. Now it's going to be very interesting to see how these negotiate these next few corners. And Harold does very sensibly hang back and just wait for that long run into turn 1 that they'll be approaching now. We've got the long pitch straight, and he'll be able to tow right up to the back of him. We'll see Chris Hardwick, I'm sure, again, weaving left to right to try and break that toe. There he goes. So he's weaving from the left to the right to the left again before he dives towards turn 1. I think Harold's a tiny bit too far back. He could have been a tiny bit closer coming into that last couple of corners as we get into the final moments of this race. And Harold just going ever so slightly wide there and just compromising his exit, and then into this double apex right-hander of turn 1 before the dive into turn 2, a left-hander. About second gear in these cars, but very, very nice and flowing for these guys. And going through turn 3 now. Harold seems to back off a bit, but Chris Hardwick onto the grass coming out of turn 3, so that wasn't ideal for him, as they've now got a long run down towards turn 4, 5 and 6. So Harold's going to be closing on the back of him once again. He'll have a few mile-an-hour overspeed on him. So let's see if he can try and make the move this time around. Otherwise, he'll have to hand back and try and make the move into turn 1 again. It seems that Chris Hardwick is the stronger driver around the back part of this circuit. And Harold's still staying with him ever so slightly. Let's see if the gap isn't very much at all. So I think these guys are going to be right on the button coming into turn 1. So let's see if Harold can try and keep his nerve against Chris Hardwick, who is a very, very strong driver indeed. Of course, he's our champion from last season, and the braking of the toe, the weaving, definitely seems to be working. It's not making him travel too close up to the back. In fact, he's trying to have a look, but doesn't seem to manage it. So Harold hangs on for another lap, but he's running out of time. We've only got 12 seconds on the clock left of this race, so it's going to be very interesting to see if where Dave Hedges is on the circuit. I think he's just coming through the last corner now, so Dave Hedges is going to take the win, I believe, very, very soon indeed. We'll keep on this battle for the moment, but I know it's still going, in fact. So Dave Hedges, I believe, has taken the lead of this race. In fact, Michael Balding is in second, and Dave Hedges wins that race. Fantastic showing from them guys in the DM Racing cars, as we've got Goff in third place with Mark Winwood in fourth. Jack Ashton come home in fifth. Unfortunate for Jack. I think he just put too much fuel in, or maybe took tyres at the pit stop. Scott Woodward in sixth place with Chris Hardwick holding on to that 7th and 8th from Harold. Matt Goodge Scott will come home in 9th place with Colin Talbot. Very unfortunate for Colin. Unfortunately got tangled with that racing incident earlier on. David Robson in 11th. Clumpers in 12th. Sean King of Porsche showing from him in 13th. Eccles, Jacks and Banwell round out the rest of the grid. That was the first round of the USSC, and that went pretty quickly indeed. But how did you find that, Ben? That was a very interesting race, wasn't it?
Yeah, very good. I think a couple of the guys that actually were probably faster today made a few key errors with their pit stop, and that unfortunately would have made a really big difference. I think he'll learn a lot from today. He was very, very, very quick throughout, pulled out a really good lead, but just putting too much fuel. Who else was it that did the same? Stopped the same as well. So we've ended up with a very different podium. But good start to the season. I can't remember what track we move on to next, but I'm sure it's a very good one. It's NOLA. So NOLA, another new track to the series, which did IndyCar, hosted IndyCar back in I think 2008 from memory. So NOLA B course, so that will be very, very interesting. Very different track, but still very, very wide. Lots of opportunities for drafting. So yeah, looking forward to it. And yeah, see where we go. In I think it's 3 weeks the next one, but
3 weeks is the SRES, which we'll have live from Simply Race as well from Malaysia, and then the week after will be the USSC from NOAA. So yeah, we'll join you then. Thank you very much for watching on the live stream. Hope everybody enjoyed it. We certainly did back here at Simply Race, and we'll join you next time for a very fun-filled, action-packed SRES Championship coming up very soon from Malaysia.